Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Outer Kingdom Productions. I am your host, Mr. D, and we have a very special episode for you. It's more along the lines of the personal stories. And it is just after 2 in the morning here, so why am I up so early on my day off? Well, I really wanted to do this episode after my sister and I were talking about them. It is based on the night terrors that I had in my life, and 2 of which happened when I was really little, and 2 happened starting in my 30s. So there's a big gap from my teens and 20s of having these. Now, why are nightmares so important to me? Well, night terrors are important to me. I've had nightmares, lots of nightmares. I've based a lot of my short stories from nightmares that I've had. But these seemed more etched into my brain. They've been burned into my psyche. They're that intense. Especially the 2 when I was a kid, because I remember them so vividly. I remember being awake for these, and that's why I think that night terrors are so interesting, because you can be awake for these, but you're more paralyzed. It's like sleep paralysis. And some of them, I can still hear the sounds in my head even today. Other nightmares have come and gone. They've really never done anything other than given me sweats, some chills, great stories. But they've never stuck around to give me the details that I can remember even now. So let's get started with these. They're going to be in order, and with the best of my knowledge, give you all the information I can. And these are just fun. Well, they weren't fun when I had them. And all the illustrations are just 1 per story. Now, when I was first doing this, I had only 3. The last one came when I was actually doing one of the illustrations, and my sister brought up my ex and the last trip we had to St. Augustine. And that one, oh boy. I didn't think I could still have these things. And this one really still sends shivers down my spine. So I really hope you enjoy these. Like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you've had any type of night terrors that have stuck with you. And if you're a writer, an illustrator, and you have chronicled these, please let me know. I'd love to know. My sisters are just as strange and horrifying, and maybe one day we'll do them with her permission. But with that, let's get started. Number 1, the dog. There was a time when I would stay with my sister at my grandparents' place. On this particular night, my grandparents and my parents had gone out, I think for a weekend, leaving my sister to babysit me and my cousin. The night in question was just a normal having pizza, watching movies. Scary movies? I don't remember. My sister really did show us scary movies, but I think I was way too little for her to be showing any type of nightmare-inducing films at the time. We didn't have a lot on VHS, but we did have a lot of things taped. But at the time, I don't believe there was anything like Friday the 13th or Halloween. And of course, my cousin really was not into scary movies, so she wouldn't have shown that. But after we had gone to bed, the way that the house is and where we stayed, there are 2 bedrooms. There's a corridor that links those 2 bedrooms, and in the center, on one side of the wall, is the bathroom. On the other side of the wall is the entrance to the living room that just opens up into this big area. Now, it was a little bit after 1, or maybe 2, but everyone was asleep. We were all sleeping together. My sister and my cousin were on the bed. I was on the floor. I'd gotten up. I was thirsty. I want to say I was probably 8 or 9 years old, so I know I was young for this. I'd gotten up, opened the door, and as I approached the entrance into the living room, I remember everything going not black and white, but almost like an old film. It seemed like all the color drained to this kind of ugly umber color. And I remember just barely stepping out into the living room. And I could hear something shuffling in the kitchen. Now, I couldn't see the kitchen. I remember just, it was completely black, but I could still see around me in the living room. Not like there was a lot of light, but it was enough that I knew where everything was. And the shuffling sounds turned into kind of a growl, almost like a guttural, howling snarl. And being little, I mean, like I was paralyzed. I was just standing there, and this thing came out of the kitchen, kind of lumbering, almost like it was rabid. It was like it didn't know where it was going, and it turned its head, looked at me, and then shot straight at me. Just, I mean, I want to say it ran at me, but it was almost like seeing a really crappy prop at like a drama club, or like a really bad 80s prop. It didn't kind of like lumber. It was almost like something was guiding it on a stick, controlling the mouth, the claws, and it came and it went straight through me. And when it did that, all I could hear was the sound, the bellow, as everything, all the color just drained and everything went black. And I couldn't see anything. So I just turned around, got back into bed, and that was it. So this one is the only night terror that I can somewhat explain of what I saw. And for the longest time, I had no idea what this thing was. I was never scared of dogs. I love dogs. So looking at this illustration, even my sister was kind of like, that's not a dog. It looks kind of like a rat or something. And it's true. So I kind of was looking around the internet, and there were two images that really kind of stuck out at me. And one of which was a movie that we all have seen, The Never-Ending Story. But the other one I never saw until I was in my late 20s. So let's talk about The Never-Ending Story first, because that's kind of important. Because if that's the movie we watched that night, then that makes perfect sense. But that's still not what I saw. So there's a scene in The Never-Ending Story, a creature called Gamork. He's this horrifying puppet that lives in this cave. It's a black wolf that serves the nothing. And you gotta understand, I haven't seen this movie in a long time. Let's just say that. I can't even remember the last time I saw this movie. But I do remember as a kid, I always either closed my eyes at the part with the Gamork, or I fast forward. I was so horrified at this thing. But that's not what I saw. Now, the other thing that interests me is this movie from 1959 called Attack of the Killer Shrews. The black and white version. Now, there is a colored version of it, and there's also a remake. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about the black and white because it makes sense if it was black and white, because that's what happened to me. But I never saw this movie at all. And when I first watched it, I was like, that kind of looks like what attacked me. And of course, those were not dogs. That's a shrew, a mutant shrew. So the only explanation that I could say of why and how I saw this creature when I never saw the movie is because I love Ernest Scared Stupid, which is a Jim Varney film. And in the beginning of the movie, they have clips from old horror movies. And one of them is the giant shrew coming through the door. So that's the only time I remember seeing it. So I saw this creature, and it became a night terror. And so, even to this day, the Gamork and Attack of the Killer Shrews is still kind of like freaky, even though it is so hokey and campy. It would not scare me today. But I have to say, as a kid, the dog really stuck with me for the next, until I pretty much got into high school. And then it kind of went into the background of my mind until my sister would bring it up again. And I would really have to relive that. And it's interesting to me that these and the next few stories can bring on legitimate fear. And what I mean is that you can start to get the sweats, the hairs on your neck start to stand up as you remember that. So there's the first one. And the other one that's about to happen only happened a few years after. Number 2, the man in the trench coat. So, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years after the dog, we were living at what we always called the old house. And especially for me, that was the first house I was living at. My sister actually had another old house before that house. So, to me, that was the old house. So this one starts off, I'm in bed. I'm already asleep. And I think I think there was a storm rolling through. Or it could have been a storm that was actually in the dream itself. I'm not sure, even today. But I remember waking up after a clap of lightning and thunder, and there was this man standing over my bed. Now, I was probably either 10, 11, so, it's pretty strange to see a man. But this was a big, hulking man. It was almost kind of cartoonish, if I'm being brutally honest. But he was wearing a yellow trench coat. Could not see his face. You could see the eyes. And of course, though, the eyes really gave it away for me today, because they were kind of glowing that white, like almost like a movie style glow. And I couldn't scream. I was just plastered to my bed. And he was dripping wet from the rain. And he reaches very slowly into his trench coat. And he pulls out this vial, not like like a big cell. And when I say cell, it's almost kind of like how like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or like a StarCraft. When I say cell, it's like a glass tube, and inside this tube was a big black spider. And I did not like spiders growing up. And he held it, and he dropped it on my bed, and it instantly broke. And the spider came at me. So I remember jumping out of bed. I actually broke the paralysis, jumped out of bed. I can remember brushing up against his trench coat and feeling the fabric and the water as I went screaming into my parents' bedroom. My parents' bedroom was just right next door. So I went in there screaming. They got up, thinking that I just had a nightmare. So they come back in. And my sister's up too, because I guess I screamed really loud. And they were really convinced that maybe there was someone in the house. Because why else would I have ever, I never did that before. I never got them up by saying there was someone either looking through my window or someone was in the house. So my dad came in, and he looked around, he looked outside. My mom was, fixing the bed and everything, getting me back in. And as he came back in, he was like, "No, the doors are all locked. There's no one here. You just had a nightmare." And as they pulled the sheets back, this is what always got me. Them telling me that it was just a dream. But when they pulled back the sheets, on the bed was a dead house spider. A dead black house spider. It was in death curl, so either the poor thing crawled up and I must have just smushed it or something. But it was a pretty big spider. I've been bitten by house spiders. Their bite can last for a while. But I'm surprised it didn't. So even to this day, I'm always like, yeah, well, there was something to that dream. And yes, you didn't see the man, but the spider that he had It could have manifested itself into this world. So, Freddy Krueger action going on. Number 3, the sounds. Coming up with a title with this one was hard because either I was going to call it the chamber or the hanging fruit. I don't really know. But the sounds are really what kept me remembering this one. And this one was not when I was a kid. None of these night terrors came back in any type of form until I hit my 30s. And this one was probably when I turned 30. So, of course, lying in my bed. This was the first time that I actually was lying in bed, not up and about. Because I can remember, like, with the dog, I was up. The man in the trench coat, I remember sitting up in bed. But this one, I was actually just laying flat on my back, waking up, and staring at the ceiling. But what woke me up in general was this tap on my forehead. And I woke up, and the room that I was in was not my room. It almost looked like a slaughterhouse inside of a monster stomach. It looked like the walls were nothing but intestines. And hanging from the ceiling really close to really close, hanging low, were these chains, like hundreds of them. I know in the picture it looks like there's only a couple. No, because that was a lot to do, and I wanted to get these done. But there were hundreds of chains, all almost they were hitting each other, the clank, clank, and each one at the end was a hook. And attached to those hooks were body parts, whether they were eyeballs, intestines, hearts, lungs, feet, hands, everything. It was just a horror show of body parts. And it would flash from the chamber to my real ceiling, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I couldn't move. I remember feeling the blood hitting my face, but I couldn't move. I knew what I was seeing. I kept telling myself, it's not real, get up, get up, get up. But no matter what I did, I just couldn't. My body, for the first time, failed to move. It was just plastered to the bed as these chains swayed back and forth, hitting one another. I think it lasted about a full minute, because I couldn't scream. And finally, I shut my eyes and managed to tear myself out of my paralysis, get on the floor. And even as I clambered on the floor and was crawling, reaching up to the wall, trying to find the light switch, I could still hear the chains and just the dripping on the back of my neck, the blood. And it took me a long time to find the light switch. And when I did, I still stayed on the floor with my eyes closed, hoping that it was gone. And naturally, of course, it was. But the sounds still stayed. And they stayed all night. How I, went back to sleep is still a mystery. And yes, the body parts were scary. The blood of which, probably was just my sweat. But the sounds, just that clinking sound, that was the most horrifying part for me. And that was actually the last one that I remembered having until 2019, when my ex and I went to St. Augustine. Now this one, of course, though, could probably be an actual ghost story and actually have a story behind it. But there isn't, and I didn't really look much into this because it is St. Augustine. There's ghosts everywhere. But those chains, that is the first time that I can be scared of a sound. The dog's guttural sounds can still be is still in my head. But this one, just the chains. That clink clink, Ugh. Let's move on. Number 4, the smiling man. So as I said in the previous story, my ex and I had gone to St. Augustine in 2019, and nothing in that day was going to spell out what I was about to see at night. It was a wonderful trip. I mean, it was a beautiful day. The beach was beautiful. We had gone out and had the most fun I had had in a long time. And when I was booking this trip, now when my sister and I go to St. Augustine, we stay at the World Golf Resort at the Renaissance. I wasn't going to afford that, and it's quite a drive from the resort all the way back to St. Augustine. So I wanted something a little bit closer, and of course, anything on the beach is going to kill your wallet. So I looked up this place. It's a small drive outward from St. Augustine at this Days Inn. And when we arrived, the room was actually very nice for something like this kind of budget. It was actually well cleaned. The beds were very comfortable. The only thing that I could say that was wrong with this place, and just getting a little bit off topic, was that in the bathroom above the shower was, in the corner, was just a small bit of mildew or mold. I mean, it was just very discolored, but it was very small, and if that was the only thing, hey, I'll take it. So we had come back after eating dinner, watched some TV, and we had gone to bed, I want to say around 11, and it did not seem like we had been asleep that long. It seemed like I had just turned off the light. Now, the way that the room is, and most rooms are like, especially the budget ones, you have the door and the window and your air conditioning unit. And by the door, I don't know why that some hotels set this up like this. You have one of these armchairs. Either they can be like a normal chair, or they can be the ones with the padding. And our bed, the one that we chose, was right next to the window, because the air conditioning unit, I get really hot, and she got really hot, so it was perfect. So, like I said, it didn't seem like we had said goodnight that long. And I woke up, just somehow woke up. I don't know why. And I look over at the chair. And of course, though, my dad taught me this too. If you're going to be, have your own family, you stay and you watch the door. Especially staying at a hotel, you protect the ones you love. And he always taught me to make sure that you look at the door, make sure you did lock it up at night. Well, I remember looking up at the door, and my eyes fell to this shadowy figure sitting on the chair by the door. And it was a kind of the figure was very lanky. And I knew he was staring at me. I couldn't see the eyes. It wasn't like before where the eyes were glowing. No. He was smiling at me. Just smiling. I blinked, closed my eyes really tight. I'm like, I'm dreaming, just wake up. Open my eyes again, he's still there. And the smile's a lot wider. So, again, I'm paralyzed to the bed. I can't really move. And the man's just sitting there. He's just staring at me. And my ex is right next to me, and I could not reach over and grab her. I just couldn't. And also in my head, I kept telling myself, don't be a wuss. It's not real. Don't let it control you. Well, again, you can't move. So I blinked and kept, whispering to myself, it's not real what you're seeing, it's just not there. It's just night, it's darkness, there's no one sitting in that chair. Well, that changed. I could hear the sound of the chair shuffling as he was getting up very slowly. And I remember grabbing the pillow that was over my forehead and pulling it down over my eyes and pulling the sheet over. Now, the way I did this was that my nose was still sticking out. I was not able to see him or see the ceiling, but my nose was still out in the crack from the pillow and the sheet. I could hear him fully get up, and he walks very slowly, like he was deliberately trying to make a sound as he came over to me. And when he got closer to the bed, I could feel his feet as he stepped on the sheet and it pulled. I could hear his breathing at that point. Now, this is what was scary, and I cannot believe while doing this video in the beginning, I completely scrubbed this from my mind. As he got closer and closer, he stops, and I know he's right there. I can feel him bending down, his nose almost touching mine. I could feel his breath. And all I remember is, as I closed my eyes and tensed, he was like, "Ha!" And he was gone. And then I pulled off the blanket, I pulled off the pillow, and I look, and he's gone. Just completely gone. And like I said, I didn't even check my phone. Usually for something like that, I check my phone to see what time it is. But I didn't. I just calmed down, and I went back to sleep. And I remember telling my ex about that. And it's just funny because, yes, you're in St. Augustine. Even if you stayed in Savannah, Georgia, or the Clown Motel that's next to the old haunted graveyard, you're gonna have ghosts. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, I really don't believe in ghosts. But that's a whole different video, of what I believe, and that would take a long time to explain. It's just interesting because the older you get, you can still be scared by something like that. And that's what fascinates me, to feel that type of fear. Now, of course, there's different types of fear. You can be facing a really bad person that's trying to hurt you. You could be facing a wild animal. Or you can be in a dream you can't escape from. Those types of legitimate fears, and it's interesting to feel that and to record that in your mind, because those never go away. So who was the Smiling Man? Was there some type of tragic event that happened at that place? Was this built upon some cemetery? I don't know. The fact of the matter was, after having a great day, one of the most perfect days ever with a girl that I really liked, and, just having fun, ends with that. So unexpected. So if there was some type of horrifying event that happened, and that man, either he was a killer or he was someone that was a poor victim. I don't know if he was a victim. That guy he was out to either scare or hurt someone. But, I don't know. But I hope that I have at least another one of these, and if I do, or if I think of others, I will record them. But I hope you have enjoyed these 4. Really no way to wrap this one up. Maybe I'll look in the papers and find out that somebody had been murdered there, but I really don't want to find out who this man was. Well, everyone, that's it for tonight. I do hope you've enjoyed these. I really have nothing else to say about them. They were fun to tell. They were fun to draw. And as I said in the last story, it is interesting to feel the fear from these things. You can tell yourself so many times that it's just a dream. But sometimes, if you can't escape from it, is it really a dream? From all of them, the dog, the man in the trench coat, the sound, and the Smiling Man, may have some type of explanation behind them, but only one that I can actually truly think about of why I had it. And that was the dog. Could be explained by just an old movie that I probably saw, or the wolf from the Never-Ending Story. But as for the man in the trench coat and the spider being in my bed, the chains or the sound, there was no reason for me to have it. I wasn't having a bad day at that time. I maybe have been under stress. Yes, stress can cause that. But that's severe? As for the smiling man, I don't know. How can you go from a beautiful, wonderful day to that? I don't know. But that's all I got for you guys today, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe. I mean, I will bring you more Doctor Who stuff, more soda chat. But it is fun to talk about things that are personal like this, because I don't see many people talking about nightmares that they have had. And I love horror. I do. I want to become a horror aficionado. But maybe the best horror that you can experience is the ones that you actually have in your mind. Because then you can really create stories behind it. And the one thing that I've really gotten into is writing short stories. And on my channel, and especially on my Instagram, I'll probably read some of them off. They're not like creepypasta worthy or anything like that. And the only one that I actually created into a short story is taking after the sound. So I'll probably read that one off someday. I gotta look through this mess and try to find them. I've got them scattered all over the place. That was kind of a big thing I did a couple of years ago, and I've kind of gotten out of it. But I do hope you enjoy. Get some sleep, everyone, and I will see you next time.